Hello, and welcome to our webinar today. Thank you for joining us. We are excited to talk about closing the skills gap with the MyTXCareer App. We're pleased to be coming to you today with our partners at the Texas Workforce Commission. Before I do a round of introductions, just a couple housekeeping notes. Number one, you are free to ask questions at any point during today's presentation. Just input them into the chat feature. And if you can't find the chat feature, just a quick note, it is at the right of your video player. There should be a little chat bubble with a red dot next to it. Feel free to click that, and then you can input any questions at any time. Secondly, we are recording this and we'll be sharing the slides as well. So be on the lookout for that after today's webinar. My name is Josh Wright, and I'm honored today to be moderating today's webinar. Before we introduce our Bryan Daniel, the chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission, I want to hand it over to my longtime colleague, Connie Sharp, to introduce herself.
Thank you, Josh. Hi, I'm Connie Sharp. I'm a senior workforce specialist here at Lightcast, and I've had the honor of serving the great state of Texas and TWC for the last 7 years. And I'm honored to be a part of this webinar.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you. We're really glad you could be with us today. Bryan, can you quickly give us a little bit of background on your role? And as you're talking, I'll move to the slide about the mission of the Texas Workforce Commission as well, as if you could cover that.
Absolutely. Josh, Connie, thanks so much for having us today. I'm Bryan Daniel. I'm chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission. We're a 3-member commission that oversees most of the workforce services here in the state of Texas. Anything you might think of, unemployment insurance, all the types of employment assistance that we give, even down to childcare. So a pretty comprehensive agency. 3 commissioners set the policy. There's a staff of about 4,500 people that work on those. We operate statewide in conjunction with our 28 workforce boards across the state. And that's our workforce solutions for Texas.
Great. Thank you, Bryan. Again, really appreciate you joining us. We know you're very busy, and it's a privilege to be working with you all on this mobile app that we'll be talking about here in just a second. Just as a way of introduction, I want to give a little bit of a view of what Lightcast is all about for those who may not be as familiar, or if you are, the different things that we're working on right now, and then we'll jump into today's agenda. So you may know us as MZ or Burning Glass, or MZ Burning Glass. We are now Lightcast. We brought the two organizations together the last few years, and we have collectively provided industry-leading labor market data for nearly 20 years to all kinds of clients across the globe. Through our products, our data, our consulting solution, our mission is to unlock new possibilities in the labor market. Just a quick view of who we work with. We are trusted by many of the largest companies, over 1,000 higher education institutions, and 775 workforce and economic development organizations across the globe. Many of those are in the US and Canada, but we also work with federal agencies in 9 different countries and are truly a leader in global labor market analytics. Today, we'll be talking again about our partnership with TWC on developing a custom career pathways mobile app. But I want to orient the audience if you're wondering, oh, I didn't know Lightcast built custom mobile apps. Well, I want to orient you to what we do just for a quick second before we dive into the agenda and talk about where those mobile apps fit. So we provide a really comprehensive array of data solutions with the goal of unlocking economic opportunity in your regions. And our goal is to provide the data, the insights, the tools, and the support with great colleagues like Connie to help you achieve those goals. So everything from researching your workforce with our labor market analytics software to connecting job seekers, either via custom apps like we're going to talk about today, or tools like Career Coach, which hundreds of organizations use across the globe as well. We have many other tools, won't get into those today, but these are the data solutions Lightcast provides. And the backbone of all of these solutions, every one of them, is our robust real-time data and taxonomy. So I'm not going to get into a full description of every data component. That would be a full webinar in and of itself. But I want to mention this because undergirding the Texas mobile app and our work with TWC is our rich library of skills, over 30,000 skills that we're helping surface, helping individuals catalog and match to career opportunities. And that is going to be a really key point in today's webinar. We believe at Lightcast, and we're seeing more and more of this skills first or skills based approach, that skills are the language to connect employers, educators, and job seekers, earners and learners, no matter where they are in their career, whether they're just in middle school at 7th or 8th grade, all the way up to 65-year-old folks who realize they need to find another job to make ends meet. So we've been pushing very hard over the last few years to map the labor market from a skills perspective, and we do that with a diverse set of data sources from job postings, profiles, and core government labor market data that we collect, enrich, and harmonize to provide actionable insights. And those insights, that data, is undergirding the Texas mobile app that we'll talk about. Okay, so with that as context, I want to get into the roadmap for today's discussion. We're going to go into a little bit of a background, hear from Chairman Daniel about the amazing, remarkable growth in Texas and the challenges that growth has presented. We're going to go into where the MyTXCareer App, that's how it came about, how they're working behind the scenes with their partners to have a big impact, and the early results that the state is seeing after launching this app in January. And then Connie is going to go through a scenario inside the app to show how it works and the support that she's providing the state. After that, we'll have a Q&A. So as you have questions, again, input them in the chat feature. We'll have a dedicated time at the end to answer as many of those questions as we can. Okay, with that, let's jump into today's agenda. First, the background. The Texas workforce story, or the growth story of Texas, is really remarkable. As many folks know, Texas has seen just an amazing a number of new companies coming into the state, tons of growth organically in the state, both from an economic perspective and a job perspective. Annual job growth in Texas has averaged 3 to 4% per year across all the major industries that Texas Workforce Commission supports, and other partners and their other partners support as well. But I want to ask Chairman Daniel to kind of give us a sense of just his perspective of that growth, and then where, especially coming through the pandemic and coming out of it, where you all has started to see some of the challenges emerging from that. So Brian, can you?
Great question.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so growth has been phenomenal. We've led the nation several of the last several years in terms of the state that has created the most employment growth. When we look at it, if you go back to just January 1st of 2015 and you move forward to today, you'll see that there are 2.2 million new jobs in the state that weren't there on January 1st, 2015. That includes the million plus jobs that fell out of the state's economy during the pandemic that were all added back, and then another million jobs were added on top of that. So the growth has been fairly steady year over year over year, but it's been explosive growth. It's not evenly geographically distributed across the state. I mean, 90% of our jobs are in the 50 counties that range from Dallas-Fort Worth to San Antonio over to Houston. That's been the state's economy for a little while, but we're seeing a growth effect across the state where we're seeing unemployment rates come down. We're seeing some opportunities. Now, what you'll see in that kind of growth is it's not always centered in one or two particular industries, and that's been true for us as well. We've seen this distributed across several industries, and in fact, of the 11 major industries that the Bureau of Labor Statistics looks at, only one for us isn't showing significant growth since the pandemic, and that's mining and logging. Mining is important for us because of oil and gas extraction here in Texas. And so all major sectors have shown growth. All but mining and logging are above where they were immediately pre-pandemic. And so, we've been following some really solid growth and then watching the effects of that growth on the labor market. Wage inflation has definitely been a part of that. We've seen gains in wages for employees, and that causes, I think, some short-term difficulties for employers in a red-hot labor market where employees are moving around quite a bit, and so there's a lot of hiring activity going on. we've definitely been seeing that now. If I, last thing I'd say about it would be, right now at this moment, we've got just slightly more job openings in the state than we have people who are telling us they're unemployed. And so, you don't have to look far to see that as evidence of a skills gap. And we're very focused on this skills gap because, truthfully, we could be at full employment plus some if we could figure out a solid solution for getting people where they are into some of these jobs that are open in the state. We continue to assist employers and job seekers, and we're constantly looking for new tools to get them together.
Great. Thank you, Bryan. I wonder if you could speak a little bit to the specific skills gap that started to materialize in the among middle skill jobs. And as we describe here on the slide, middle skill jobs require more than a high school diploma, but less than a bachelor's degree, often in the form of community college certificates, apprenticeships. And I know there's different definitions of middle skill jobs. And I also understand from our previous talks that you all are thinking even beyond middle skill as well in some ways. But where did the middle skill focus come for the state of Texas?
Watching people as they were in a temporary exit from the labor market and watching them come back in. And we were looking at different categories of workers. For example, only single digits of people who are in jobs that require a university degree, bachelor's degree or higher, single digits found themselves unemployed for more than a month or two during the pandemic. Something like 3%. People with only a high school diploma or no high school diploma had significantly more job loss. And we were looking at this large middle group, which is, that 56% you're showing on the screen is absolutely right. Slightly more than half the jobs in the state are in this category that require some training after high school, but they don't necessarily require you even to get an associate's degree, much less a university degree. And we were just wondering to ourselves, why are people in jobs that don't give them any kind of upward mobility when it looks like it would be a fairly straightforward scenario to get additional training and get yourself in one of these middle skills jobs. We promptly found out it's significantly more complicated than that, but the premise actually, frankly, I think is that straightforward. So we're looking at the jobs and we're realizing that there's an immediate opportunity for 10, 11% of the workforce to immediately upskill if we can put some training opportunities in front of them. Now, we did a number of things. We were offering online training following the pandemic. Community colleges were collaborating with us. We were doing some pop-up and short-term training. We were looking for lots of different tools to put out there and working with employers to do on-the-job training. And what we found out is that for a lot of people, and this makes sense, for a lot of people, I know where I am right now skill-wise, and I know where I've been in the workforce, but I don't quite understand how to get all the things put together to get the skills I need to get to this other place in the workforce that I'd rather be. And it's like, it's not so much that they didn't have, some tangible grasp on, I can get that at the community college, I can do this here. They understood how and where to do it. I think the difficult part became for all of us is understanding, okay, you have a certain set of skills right now, and we need to translate those into another industry that you don't really probably, speak all the lingo. And we've got to give you some solid advice about how to translate where you are now to where you want to be. And this became a really significant picture of how you can start closing, whether it's a middle skills gap or another kind of skills gap, because there's always several kind of operating simultaneously in the workforce. You need something to help people translate where they are now to where they want to be.
And that's a really important point that you just brought up. And I think that hits on this, what we describe on this slide as the aha moment for the state, as you were doing research, trying to figure out what to do about this very complicated, a problem that you can describe in a concise way, like you said, but it is very complicated and convoluted, and how to get people into pursuing new career paths. And I wonder, as you're talking, my thought is there's a skills gap, but there's also, is it fair to say that there was an information gap, or there still is an information gap on how to do that? So the lack of understanding, just the data, the ability, the resources to know how to go from point A to point B, or even what a point B could be.
Yeah, so I think it's best characterized by this. I think there's a lot of people working on this. You'll have local chambers of commerce might have a workforce division. We have our 28 workforce boards that serve every county of the state. I think there were always people with that data and the ability to help, but I think helping the job seekers find the motivation, sometimes courage, sometimes just helping them see that there's a different way to do things outside of a crisis. I mean, if you get laid off and you're in a workforce office, your need to go back to work is acute, and you need to do that now. So if we tell you, hey, for 3 more months of training, you could 100%, do this other better job, that's not what you want to hear at that moment. You just need to get back to work because you got laid off. And we needed to find a way to convey that information in a way that the employee wasn't in this acute situation where they've got to make a job change right now. Also, I think at the same time is understanding that if you chose a particular career path, you're not exactly happy with where that's leading you. You still have skills that can set you up in another career path. I give you a good example. It's a quick one. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Dental hygienists make great chip manufacturing workers to make silicon computer chips. They're used to working in a confined space. They're used to wearing a mask all day. They're used to not really having someone to talk to. And it doesn't, in thinking about it, you don't think, oh, I'll go from a dental hygienist to working at a chip manufacturing facility. That's not intuitive. That's not something you'd sit around and think about. But there's a lot of skills that they have that are immediately transferable. And the fact is a dental hygienist went to school for a long time to become a dental hygienist. And so they're not likely to want to walk away from that. But, like some have said, they can make as much or more money working in chip manufacturing, and they don't have to put their hands in somebody's mouth all day. So, I mean, they're looking for different ways to kind of apply their skills. We had experts that had the ability to convey that, but we weren't, I think, doing the best job that we could to get people into those offices or to get people into those situations where they could learn about that. And so we felt like it should be just a little bit more self-directed, and then put the experts a little later on in the process after people have done some self-discovery and figured out where they are and where they think they can be.
That's a great segue into our next, just kind of talking through the solution that you all launched in January, and that is the MyTXCareer mobile app. So more of a self-directed journey that then allows them to connect to the career experts in your state. I wonder if you could just describe, as we can walk through these slides, but just I'd love to hear from your perspective of, you had that aha moment of, figuring out, okay, people need a resource to help them think through these career paths and see where the opportunities are, to what led you from get to that point to say, okay, let's mobilize and galvanize as a state and work on this, a free mobile app that anyone could use across the state.
Yeah. So when you start looking at it, you think, okay, well, why on earth wouldn't somebody just upskill or reskill? If it's more money, if it's better working situation, something you enjoy more, like, why wouldn't you just upskill or reskill and get that better job? And I mean, I think that's a normal human reaction. And when you look at it, you think, oh, like, why isn't that happening? And the answer is called life. They've got families, they work second shifts, so they can't go to school in the afternoon, whatever the case may be. And we had community colleges and others that were doing some non-traditional schedules for training. But that's great for the people who have signed up. I think for a lot of people, it's very human to start to feel like you're stuck in a particular sector or a particular job. And I think the MyTXCareer App the beauty of that is wherever I am on my break, at home, kids have gone to bed, I got 10 minutes to myself. I really got to do something about this career. I mean, you can go to Instagram and see what else doing. You can go to Pinterest and see, how everybody's decorating their house. You can do those things, or in a very similar mobile environment, you could go over, answer just a handful of questions. It doesn't take very long. I did it myself, and start really answering some of those questions, and probably still have time to get back over to Instagram and learn a couple of things. So it's one of those scenarios where it's like we needed something that was foolproof, that we knew was accurate information, but we needed it in people's hands so they could work on that on whatever timetable it is they had to work on that, and then really start coming to some conclusions about where they wanted to be. I said we'd build in the experts later in the process, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, I'm sure. But you can do a lot of this self-directed, but you can plug in with another human being and talk through it, talk over it, talk around it, at really any point in the process, and we can really dedicate our workforce boards and some other folks to answering those questions that the app probably can't do the best job of answering. But the people doing this can't ever discover those questions without getting on the app to figure out what they didn't know about it or what they might want to know more about. So I think it's this ideal situation where you can have some self-directed work, you can have people be able to take their personal experience, plug it into a tool that will tell them kind of where they are and where we think they can get. And then at some time in the process, you can plug some people up together where they can get some human opinions, some human interaction, and some expert advice on how to actually make that happen. There's so many opportunities out there. Sometimes it's difficult to order off that menu because you're not exactly sure which of those is going to be best or fastest or cheapest, or even what you need. And I just think having multiple ways to look at those and multiple ways to find out information about those really sets people up for the best quality decision making.
Yeah, that's really well said. And that the mix of technology making data very easy to access and then connecting to human, the human element, I think is a great best practice, a great combination that you all have structured here. And I wonder if you could also talk through, we've talked a lot about leveraging existing skills, understanding adjacent, like if someone has some skills that they developed, they may not even be aware of, that they could open up into a new career path. We talked a little bit about how Lightcast is helping with a skills-focused approach, and this app is very, skills-focused as well. And I wonder if you could talk through just a little bit bigger picture as we walk through this app. What is the Texas Workforce Commission? What is your viewpoint on where a skills based? There's a lot of talk about skills-based hiring, skills-based workforce development, and where the strength of taking a skills focus is really good, and where sometimes you need to maybe take another approach as well.
Well, I think the first thing I would say is there still exists a fairly significant disconnect's too strong a word, but there's a disconnect between the C-suite and the HR office. I think a lot of corporate leaders believe that they've converted to a skills-based hiring process, and I think most of the HR leaders in those very same corporations are still using the older style of looking for very specific degrees or credentials. And I think the reason for that is they know that in looking for particular degrees or particular credentials, that's a third-party verification that person is likely to have those skills. I get why the HR professionals are doing that. I tend to side with the C-suite folks because honestly, if you have the requisite skills and the sort of motivation to do the work and the willingness to show up and do it, then you should be the one doing the work. You have lots of different avenues by which to gain those skills, and we really need to be able to do that. We've gotten ourselves in this kind of, I think just sort of culturally, if you have a college degree, you're good at all the things that you can do. When in reality, when I started in the workforce 30 something years ago, there was a lot of guys that were in charge of the places that we worked that had barely had a high school degree, because they went to, Europe or the South Pacific or Korea shortly after high school and never got a chance to go to college. They went and did their military service, they came back, and they worked their way up through those companies. Like when I entered the workforce, the idea that somebody might not have a college degree was quite common, and you didn't really question that. And it was probably 10 years later when I began to notice that they would only hire people with college degrees. I think getting things focused on a skills-based type arrangement, it doesn't mean that you can still look for the third-party verification of the different skills. You can require a certain certificate, but I don't know that, somebody who can go out and successfully get that certificate, I don't know that they're lacking because they didn't do the other parts of their bachelor's degree. I mean, political science is nice, history is nice, algebra is nice, but if that's not what the job you're hiring for requires, I don't know that it should matter to you that those parts are missing, as long as they have the requisite certificates that you need. Middle skills employers, they obviously figured this out a long time ago. They want their automotive technicians to have about 3 fairly significant credentials. There are others that they can get, and they zero in on that carefully. But I think when we look at the broader hiring market, it's what's keeping people from moving to just like, do you have these skills, is finding those markers that tell them that indeed they do. Because here's the thing, and I think I'm right about this. I'll stand by this, and it would be a horrible hiring practice for somebody to rely on this. But I, there's very little that I haven't been able to learn how to do from YouTube. So my operation, which requires communication skills I've gathered over the years. Like, if I'm going to fix something at home, or I'm going to do something that I want to do, I can go to YouTube and then generally fairly well be able to duplicate that. I think that's 90% of people out there. I think most of us in this country are smart enough to watch a YouTube video, figure out if that's something I can attempt. If I have the tools to do it, I'll do it. But that doesn't mean I have the skills to go do that professionally for somebody. And I don't know that I should represent that I do. I think the need for hiring managers and others to be able to verify that you have the skills is kind of what's holding us back from just a totally skills-based approach to hiring. The other part to that is I'll be honest with you, like when I went to career fair in 1992, workforce commissioner was not among the list of professions that I thought I might be interested in, because I didn't even know that was a thing in 92. And it's not like there's a set of skills that you need particularly to do the job that I do today, but it requires a whole lot of skills. And so they have to figure out different ways to kind of ascertain that we have those before you get a job like this. I think the further you move up through company structures, the further into leadership you get, I think more and more that's the case. You'll see chief operating officers that might be an MBA. You'll see chief operating officers that might be a lawyer. You'll see chief operating officers who were the best sales guy the company's ever had. There's different avenues you can get there, but finding those skills is the difficult part for the leadership in the company to do. And if we're going to really move toward a skills-based approach, we need to figure out more and more ways to kind of satisfy the need to know, can they really demonstrate those skills? Is what they know actually applicable to what this business is trying to do? And we're using credentialing and degrees right now, but it might very well be that we technological or some kind of particular assessment tool that we can use in the future. I don't know what direction that's heading. I think right now the comfort level with using certificates and other types of credentials is kind of the ultimate, but it could very well be that if we're really going to march toward this skills-based approach, that we find ways for people to demonstrate that they have those skills, and then we're able to put them to work. And that would certainly help close the gap between someone who started in one profession and wants to change to another. It would speed them greatly. when those professions are hiring, I think they probably appreciate that.
Thoughts on just all the dynamics that go into this. And I think I would say we're still in the early days of pioneering what it means to take a skills-based approach, or how this is going to work in practice.
Oh yeah.
Uh, for sure.
Yeah.
Before we go to the next section to talk about early results and the impact, I wonder, Bryan, if you could just say, all the different options you guys had to, building this app. You worked with Lightcast, and again, we talked about Lightcast's data expertise, and I wonder if you could just talk about what made you, want to partner with Lightcast on this.
Well, state government has very tight procurement policies, and it's a whole process to get to work with somebody. So there's an application a process which we initiate, and then there's really an entire evaluation process, and it's one actually I'm not part of. The way we're set up structurally, administratively, I don't actually participate in those. I think for a company like Lightcast to want to work on that, you certainly have excellent data, and you've been using that data for a while. But I think our desire to work with Lightcast probably boils down to you obviously worked very well through the procurement process, but I think you had a value add approach that we could put into action, very, very quickly. Your data, a lot of what you gather from us and other agencies, your ability to take data that you've been interpreting for years and put that readily into the app and let the power of the app, the speed with which that could be done, obviously was attractive to us, and we really were as interested in getting this product right as we were getting it to the market. I think we accomplished both those things.
Great. Well, it's a privilege to work with you on this, and thank you for those comments. I want to pivot to, we've got a number of questions coming in that we'll get to here in just a few moments, but I wanted to pivot to I know we're early days still here with the release of this app. Again, it came out in January. We're sitting here on April 4th. But I want to talk through the impact and the benefits that the app has already seen. And Connie is going to give her perspective here in just a little bit as well. But Bryan, I wonder if you could just describe, some, how you all and how, your large team is working on getting adoption, and making sure there's the visibility and support for this app across the state, across your agency and your partners.
Well, obviously we wanted adoption to be quick. People aren't really that interested in jumping on the government bandwagon quickly. I get that. I appreciate that. But we thought this was just a good marketplace product. Adoption's been quicker than we anticipated. We've pushed this out through a lot of channels. The media has been very interested in it. TWC's been pushing it through our channels. I think there's opportunities for workforce boards to use this. And so the initial adoption being a little quicker than anticipated, I thought really was as much a testament to the need for this in the marketplace as the utility of the tool. And I think once people figured out the tool was every bit as effective, if not more so, than what was being described, I think we even saw a little acceleration of adoption from that. We used most of our typical methods for moving something out there. It is useful, and I think that's evidenced by the fact of the number of people that have begun using it, and even repeat users. Those numbers appear to be good as well. So, lot of good activity moving on that. I think the follow up that we do will continue to drive that kind of demand. And from what I'm seeing, we're seeing a lot of movement in that effect. So, honestly, if this was this is free to the public, but even if I was product manager in a company, I'd be pretty pleased with where we were at this point.
It's wonderful. Do you have any stories or any early, anecdotes of things you've heard about how the app has been helpful?
In general, we've just been hearing people talk about kind of they were stuck in a rut. This kind of helped give them some new perspective. In general, I didn't realize that this particular industry was hiring in my area. That's not what I thought I wanted to do. I had never considered that. I didn't know about that. So, the anecdotal stuff we're hearing has to do with career discovery. It has to do with understanding, where somebody is in the workforce and might want to be. It has to do with upskilling, reskilling. So it's all the things that we would hope that it would be, because we know that every individual Texan, that is individual. It's everybody's going to have a different experience, and everybody's going to have to get there somewhere. And you do a tool that's we don't want it to be a one size fits all approach, but we can only write it one way. And so I think, just based on what anecdotal stuff we're hearing back, it would appear that we're hitting the right notes. People are starting to use it. I think we're a little bit of time away from kind of understanding the more intermediate and longer term impacts of it, and I think that'll bear out as we continue to look at upskill, reskill numbers and how people are coming into the workforce offices.
Great. Yeah, for sure. We're still in the early days, but those anecdotes are encouraging. And Connie, as we segue to talking through kind of a scenario here in the next section, I know you, in working with our partners, the project team that's working on this app, you're able to see some of the stats either in real time or weekly, monthly stats. And I'm curious if there's any ones that really jump out to you as you're supporting the Texas Workforce Commission.
Yeah. To date, we've had 2,946 downloads, which is amazing in the last 4 months. And we know that people stay at least 5 minutes on the app once they download it. The majority of our apps are downloaded from Travis and Harris County, which means we're getting really good coverage in those two counties. Obviously, Travis is Austin, so of course our TWC partners are testing, but I'm really encouraged that the other counties, we're starting to see more and more downloads coming from the other counties in Texas. So I think almost 3,000 downloads in 4 months is really, really encouraging.
For sure. And again, we'll continue to monitor those stats and come along TWC as we want to make sure that there's increased adoption over time as well. As we go to this next section, I'm going to let Connie speak to just a real world scenario. We already Chairman Daniel talked through this example of a dental hygienist who could work into chips manufacturing, and there's a lot of different ways to do some either hypothetical or real world scenarios. But Connie, I'm going to let you talk through that, and then some other ways you're specifically helping support the app and TWC.
Yes. So part of what we do, and I'm just going to get into the app. The app is actually really self-guided. It's very easy to use. It allows you to either start with, do you want to grow with your current field? Do you want to try something new, or you're not sure? You can choose to sign up, or you can just explore. Once you pick what you would like to do, it asks you for your education level. Once you put that in, it asks you for your job title if you're currently working. And from there, it allows you to pick, I jumped too far ahead, Josh. It allows you to take an interest inventory quiz, which is 6 questions. Do you like to work with your hands? Are you interested in telling your story? Are you interested in analyzing data? And once you get your quiz results, it guides you to different careers and then pathways that you can take to get there. Once you get there, it asks you if you have skills. We picked registered nursing as our endpoint, so it asked if I had some more skills. It also gave me what kind of education levels are offered. And then what it does is it gives me the opportunity to register, and it points me to the nearest Workforce Solutions Center so I can get assistance if I want to go back to school or if I want to look at job opportunities. I really like the app because, one, it's easy to use. It is something that we're continuously working on with our TWC partners to make sure that it's easy to understand, and that we are meeting the needs of our Texan partners. I think that the way it's laid out is very logical and easy to use. The screenshots don't really reflect all that the app can do. How we continue to support TWC is I'm always on call. So if anything happens, the TWC staff does reach out to me, and we are always available in helping them. We have regular meetings with TWC, so we're always evaluating the mid-skill careers, and we're working with them to make sure that we are bringing in new and emerging careers like chips manufacturing and chip technology. Carbon capture is something that's coming up in Texas. So we want to make sure that those careers that are related to this emerging industry is going to be captured in the app. And also part of what we do is we facilitate all of the moving pieces between TWC and between all of our product teams to make sure the vision is realized and that all the app is working the way TWC would like it to be working.
Excellent.
And
Yeah. Thank you, Connie.
you're welcome.
Yeah. That's a big part of what we do, obviously, is the customer, making sure we're ensuring the success of our partners like TWC, and Connie's a huge part of that. So thank you. As we get to Q&A and closing comments from our participants here, I also want to mention just really quickly, we published a case study about the launch of the app and the challenges that Texas was seeking to solve with this app on our blog. There's a QR code there. If you want to scan that, you can go to lightcast.io and search our blog, and it's right there. An interview with Chairman Daniel that we did a few weeks ago. And again, thank you again, Chairman Daniel, for being part of this today. We have a number of questions that we're going to get to, and as I tease that out, and we get to we start getting to the Q&A section. We'd love to hear from you if you're interested in learning more about this, building an app like this for your state or region. Understanding, do you want, creating another microsite or career portal, or understanding how to solve like really thorny talent gap and workforce challenges in your region. We'd love to talk to you about those. And at the same time, I know we have a lot of questions, so we thank you all for joining. And we've got a number of questions that I'm just going to throw them out here. One of those questions is, Chairman Daniel, I'll ask you this one, and we can have a broader conversation too here. But how would you? The question is, how would you describe the current state of soft or common skills in Texas? And will this app help address those skills gaps? So we talk a lot about technical skills, but there's the human skills. Sometimes we call them durable skills or those soft skills. That there's also those gaps. And do you feel like the app addresses those? And how would you consider? How would you describe the current state of that kind of skills gap in Texas?
Great question. Employers are telling us constantly that this set of skills is the one that's probably most concerning to them in the marketplace. I get it. I think things have changed. I think that students don't learn things in school the same way they did. I don't think parents probably convey that information in the same way perhaps that our parents did. And so I understand the concern of employers. Unfortunately, I think the app sort of deals with the periphery of those types of soft skills. But that's not something that I feel like we could really fully evaluate using an app like this one. I think that there will be opportunities for people to get those skills. I think, we're actually, I just had a conversation a couple hours ago about, what kind of training could we even facilitate to get these soft skills. But they're sort of, not that different between industries and very different between industries all at the same time. Yeah, a long answer to say the app's not going to be particularly helpful at helping someone to discover which soft skills that they're lacking. I think it will help them narrow down hard skill wise, specific skill wise, technical skill wise, where they are, where they need to be, and how they can get that. I think we're going to have additional tools to kind of deal, or at least help employers understand better what it is they're seeing and not seeing relative to these soft skills. I hear it. I hear the gamut. It's fascinating to me. From not showing up on work on time, okay, that's like always been the case, to not really wanting to talk to their colleagues or their customers, and so I think there's sort of generational expectations going on. I think there's industry expectations that are going on. I think there's sector expectations that are going on, and I think we've always really kind of had to spend some time getting everybody on the same page. But I think between the generations, particularly, I think there's just different ways of doing things, and we're in the midst of trying to make sure we're all speaking the same language on that.
Absolutely. We've got a bunch of questions. I know we don't have a ton of time left, so hopefully we can click through a few of these. But Chairman Daniel, what metrics? One of the kind of a foundational question here is, how would you measure success? And for the app in general, but what metrics? We talked about a few, average time on the app and downloads and things like that. But what metrics will you be using from your vantage point to say this has been a success?
Yeah, I've thought about that question a lot, and I saw it pop up here on the Q&A. I thought that's actually a great question to ask. Government should ask that question more often. I think the answer to that is usage. I don't think we can monitor, movement of the workforce. We're 15 million in our civilian labor force. It would take 1 million people to move suddenly for us to even notice that. So I don't think people switching careers or getting in a new career is going to be something that we can see in real time. We'll see that over time. And then I also don't think that just downloads are going to be a metric that tells us about the ultimate success of the app. I think sustained downloads, and I think once we're through kind of this introductory period, continuing to see downloads will be a useful metric. I certainly think amount of time spent on the app will be a useful metric. And I think to the extent we can measure this, people showing up in the different workforce board offices or contacting us here at TWC will be a useful metric to kind of see how that moves over time. But I think for me and where I sit, seeing if we continue to see the amount of time people use the app remain constant at where it is, I think those will be successful metrics, and I think that will be telling us the story that we're wanting to see.
Great, thank you. And that actually is a really nice entry point into this next question we got, and that is, what data points from the app will be shared, and if there's any that will be shared with local workforce agencies. And Connie and Brian, maybe you can both tackle that in different ways from your perspectives. Connie, I know you're working with our partners to make sure we're having a close look at the analytics. Will there be any data that will be shared with the local workforce agencies? And Brian, feel free to jump in there too.
We do get analytics, and they're shared monthly with TWC. What TWC shares out to the local boards, I don't know. If we get asked for metrics, I can share them out. I haven't had any local board actually ask me, how many users in my county are downloading the app. But I'm sure that our partners at TWC wouldn't mind me sharing those out. But like I said, TWC gets those numbers on a monthly basis. So we know exactly who's downloading, because we do capture by zip code when that individual registers or where their where they're using the app, so they know which workforce solution center to go to. They have to put in a zip code. So we're able to capture that kind of geotag.
Brian, anything to add on that?
All I'd say is we want the public that's using this app to feel confident that their data, whatever they've shared, is safe with that app. There are some opportunities where it asks the user, how much of this that, could somebody else use within the system. And we don't make any secret of the fact that our experts, if you want them to get involved, will get involved, and they're going to have to see some of what you put. It doesn't ask any personal or intrusive questions. It is asking you about your career. So it's not set up to do a data dump, where we just send this raw data to our partners. It was never set up for that. But I think there's appropriate safeguards, and given that there's no personally identifying information in it that could be somehow used in a negative manner. But even beyond that, we want you to be comfortable that your data is safe in the app. It's between you and your phone. If you want that shared or you want additional input, you have to actually take action on that. I think that's a reasonable way to do that.
For sure. And we just got another question. Keep streaming in. Thank you all for the questions. I think this is also a really good question, Brian, for you. And that is, do you see this app being useful for workers who have been out of the labor force for a long time?
Yeah, I think this has a lot of use if you've been out of the labor force, even if you sort of self-selected to be out of the labor force and you're ready to get back in. I think it's a great way to kind of brush up on where you are and where you might want to be. I think it's particularly great for someone who's in the labor force who's not happy with where they are. I think it shows a very efficient path to get yourself the training you need to move to a different sector, a different career, a different opportunity. And so I think for both of those groups, those would be key groups that would benefit from this. And I think to some extent, even students in school can use it as a great career pathway tool. They're not going to be able to chart their own career, but they can at least chart some of the things that they can and should be doing to get themselves in a successful career. So there's a lot of groups that has an almost immediate impact for. I think it is easy to use for those groups, and it relies on data that you already know about yourself.
Great. That actually, speaking of school, we got a question about educational pathways and which ones are most appealing. And that's a very broad, it's a big question. We could talk a lot about the educational system. And I know you've done a lot of work on credentialing in the state of Texas, but where do you see this app, and not just, in connecting to people to the right types of training so that they can get those, they can get the right educational pathway so they can go in the right career pathway?
I mean, this app coincidentally sort of coincides with a big change in our community college setup here in the state. We revamped in our last legislative session the finance system for our community colleges and how they get paid for students that they instruct. Because this app deals with skills, and a lot of what the new community college finance plan allows them to do, they're able to do a lot more skills-based instruction versus specific credentialing or specific types of degree plans. And so I think there's a natural mesh up there. We didn't actually, when we started down this road, we didn't know that was going to happen. It has worked out great. I think it gives opportunities for people to plug in to their local community college and be able to start getting those skills. But I think the tool also works for the community colleges to understand they're not teaching certain things. I think that we'll begin to understand pretty quickly what the demand in the labor force is. Lets them make faster, better decisions in terms of their course offerings.
For sure. And again, a lot more to unpack here as we go forward. And I know we're excited to hear how we move from these early results to midterm and long-term results with the app. Chairman Daniel, as we wrap up, I want to say thank you again for joining us and giving us your insight and your experiences in the workforce system and from your vantage point. I think this has been a great discussion. Connie, thank you as well. Again, if you're interested in talking to Lightcast, not just about an app or a microsite or anything around data, skills gap, understanding any of this, we'd love to talk to you, love to help. And we will be sending out this recording and slides again for those who want to share this out or may want to listen again or weren't able to fully join us. So thank you all again, and I hope you all have a great day.